An increasing number of Americans believe that political violence is justified. Hey guys, this is Double D from the Entitled Millennials podcast, and this is my Thinking Out Loud series. So it's no question that we are living in some trying times, guys. It is no question that we are living in the most politically divisive period in American history since at least the height of the Vietnam War. We are seeing an increased polarization on both sides. It is no longer, obviously it is still Republican v. Democrat, but it is no longer just Republican v. Democrat. It is alt-right fascist versus leftist. Families are being torn apart by political divisiveness. If you guys watch the Entitled Millennials podcast, the last couple episodes, we have talked at length about some of the trends that are going on, some of the speech that's coming out of the president or some of his advisors and ex-advisors like Roger Stone, fears that one side or another is going to openly try to rig an election, like we have going with the whole mail-in ballot thing, Trump trying to shut down the post office, questions about ballots being thrown out, questions about ballots being hidden, Trump saying that he needs to have poll watchers. There's all these different things happening where the legitimacy of elections from both sides, alt-right, left, Democrat, Republican, are being questioned. No one trusts the other side. And that is leading an increasing number of Americans to believe that in the wake that one side or the other wins, that our side would be justified in political violence. I have a little figure here for you guys in one of these articles that John Boy sent me that we were discussing before the podcast, the most recent podcast, we were discussing this sort of trend towards people really being radicalized in one direction or another. And we can argue whether or not that's good or bad. I would say that it is just a product of the times. It is a product of a government that is no longer fulfilling its social contract and is completely rotten through. And in lieu of getting any real change over the last several decades, people are increasingly being radicalized. And in that process of radicalization, and the belief that the system no longer works, that the system is rigged and corrupt, people are inevitably going to trend towards believing that political violence is justified. We have seen that throughout history. We've seen it in the Weimar Republic of Germany and countless other rises of dictatorships and collapses of government around the world and throughout history. But this figure I wanted to share with you guys shows that in November of 2017, just 8% of Republicans and Democrats believe that some form of political violence was justified. Now, fast forward to September 1st of 2020, it is now 33% of registered Democrats and 36% of registered Republicans believe that political violence of some form is justified. Now, I just want you guys to think about that for a minute before I go on to anything else. Think about those figures. A third of registered party members on either side believe that some form of political violence is acceptable. That's up from 8%, less than a tenth just 3 years ago. If that is not a sign of the desperate times that we are living in, if that is not a sign of the impending collapse of the rule of law in the United States of America, then I really don't know what is. And Johnny has talked to me somewhat about this, sent me messages when he's at home getting in his thoughts and thinking about what he wants to do for the next show. He messaged me and he said, "Man, I'm scared." And I've had other people, I've had some of our subscribers and some of our patrons and family members. And I mean, hell, we're even hearing people on the mainstream media and other, YouTube creators and influencers talk about this as well. I remember just recently I watched a Joe Rogan podcast. I think it was one with Frank von Hippel, who was a biologist, scientist. At the end of the podcast, they talked about being genuinely concerned because of the pandemic, the economic crisis, people being out of work, people being evicted, the poor government response, and on top of all this, increased political divisiveness and increased political militarization. We know both sides, left and right, are arming themselves. They talked about, and others have talked about, the genuine fear about the collapse of the rule of law, the collapse of civilization, or a second civil war in the United States. Guys, this is real shit. I mean, all this is real shit. I know our podcast is humorous. We try to, and if you've been watching the show recently, we still crack jokes and have a good time, but you can tell even just us talking that we're getting a little tense ourselves, and sometimes the humor isn't coming as easy anymore because we're heading towards some shit. You have Roger Stone talking about if President Trump loses the election, that he should declare martial law because of the belief that it's a rigged election. On the other night's debate, when both candidates were asked to condemn white supremacy, Trump did not condemn white supremacy. And you could argue that this is reading between the lines or whatever, but he told the Proud Boys, a known alt-right group, that, stand down and stand by. Like, when I heard that, stand by, and you've seen probably tweets and memes and people talking about this as well, but, he's telling militia groups to stand by in case something happens. We know that there's fishy shit going on with the ballot process. We had Donald Trump Jr. do a tweet or a video where he's like, we need every able-bodied man and woman to join an army of Trump for Operation Election Security. Like, we're living in a society that is on the brink of truly becoming a failed state. Ask anybody ask them, do they believe that the elections are fair? Do they believe that the rule of law is going to continue? Are they scared about what's going to happen in the wake of this election? And now I sat here and I read you this figure. A third of registered party voters in this country, believe that political violence is acceptable if the other side wins. Now, our channel has taken some flack in the past, being a leftist channel, with us, telling people to arm themselves, consider joining and training in a militia. We've taken some flack for, even if you go on our Facebook page, there's a review of our podcast and of our content saying that we condone or are advocating for violence. And I just want to say that is not the case. Okay? I'm not going to tell anyone here that if Donald Trump wins and it's obviously a blatant election, to go out and start committing acts of terrorism or doing anything wild. But I have many times on this solo show, and we have talked many times on our podcast about you need to be prepared, because this is not the United States of 30 years ago. To our older, I know we have older subscribers here that aren't millennials or boomers, and this is not the America you grew up in anymore. It is a fundamentally different society, and shit is going to hit the fan one way or another. I'm convinced of it, and God help me, I hope I am wrong. But you need to make a fucking plan for you and your family to make sure you're safe. We have already seen riots and civil unrest due to Black Lives Matter, not necessarily Black Lives Matter itself, but the police response. We know political violence is already happening. And with all this buildup coming around the election and the concerns that people are having, and this figure of a third of voters saying that they would consider political violence justified, you need to make a plan to either get the fuck out of Dodge or be ready to defend your home and your livelihood and your family members from political violence, from political militants. Whether you are that far left or that far right or not does not matter. You need to be prepared to protect the people, and you need to be prepared to survive, because we don't fucking know what's going to happen. And I'm not trying to fear monger. I'm not trying to get everybody afraid. I hope everything goes over smooth. I hope, I hate both of these fucking candidates, but I hope that we continue to have a peaceful transition of power. But I am not so sure that's going to happen anymore. So make a fucking plan. Bury some cash in the background. Bury some guns. Buy some guns. Make sure you have provisions. If you have a passport, Get a fucking visa. I mean, this country's going to shit anyway, and it's only a matter of time before the whole fucking empire is completely rotten through and collapses in on itself. Get the fuck out of Dodge, or make a plan to protect yourselves, your loved ones, and your community. Do it. Do it now. You should have been doing it months ago. We've talked about it. But, yeah, I'm rambling. I'm thinking out loud as always, but we're living in some fucked up times, guys. You read about this stuff in your textbooks or your fucking novels or your dystopian fiction books, and you're like, wow, I wonder what it would be like, and I would do something about it. And, well, here we are. And, you know, the reason why we're in this position is too many people just trying to get by, just trying to survive, you know, just trying to keep quiet. We're in this position now with Donald Trump as president, with a completely rotten through political system, because people did not get involved for several generations on the level that they needed to. It's all of our fault. Even mine. I got involved, but I didn't do enough. So here we are sitting in the fucking mess. And now it's time to make a plan of what you're going to do when the shit hits the fan. So, anyway, guys, I'm rambling. Just want to make a video for you guys about this because I just found, you know, both Johnny and I both found that figure astounding. This is not even like radical leftists, you know, fucking alt-righters saying that they believe political violence is justified. It's regular Democrats and Republicans. So that's the world we're living in, guys, and you better wake up to it quick before it's too late. But we should have another episode of the podcast coming out for you guys soon, hopefully by the beginning of next week. So until that time, guys, I love you. Don't forget to join the Patreon for as little as $3. Subscribe, like, comment, tell your friends about us. Help us grow. Not that if shit hits the fan, it's going to matter that we have a YouTube channel or not anyway. So anyway, I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.